Michael Carter felt that familiar bite of cold steel as a handcuff cinched around his right wrist. That metallic click echoed in the quiet night, sending a shiver that had nothing to do with the evening chill snaking up his spine. "What in the Sam Hill are you doing?" he barked out, the surprise and fear turning quickly to anger as he tried to yank his arm away from Officer Daniels' iron grip. Daniels just smirked, that nasty, condescending twist of his lips that Michael had seen on more than one occasion. "Busted, Carter. Plain and simple. You really think you can just stroll around selling this crap?" He held up a small, clear plastic baggie, the kind you see in a million bad movies, filled with white powder that Michael knew instantly could ruin his life. Michael's eyes bugged out. "That ain't mine. I swear to God, man, you got the wrong guy." Daniels just chuckled humorlessly and slammed Michael against the cool metal of his squad car, the impact knocking the wind out of him. Yeah, I've heard that one a million times. Tell it to the judge. He's real sympathetic to guys like you." Michael's mind was a whirlwind, thoughts crashing into each other like bumper cars. He knew, deep down in his gut, exactly what had just happened. Daniels had pulled some dirtbag move, reached into his own pocket, and planted that poison on him. It was a setup, plain as day. But who in their right mind would take the word of a black man with a record, even if that record was clean, over a white copping uniform? His life, the decent, honest life he'd been working so hard to build, was about to crumble into dust unless he could somehow, some way, prove the truth. But what Daniels, in his arrogance, his prejudiced assumptions, didn't realize was this. Michael had a secret weapon, a tiny piece of technology that had silently witnessed the whole damn thing. He already had the proof. 24 hours earlier, the air had been thick with the humid late summer heat, a far cry from the icy dread gripping Michael now. Life had been normal, if a little tiring. Michael Carter was nobody special, just a hard-working dude, an auto mechanic with grease under his fingernails and a strong back. He had zero criminal record, never even gotten a parking ticket in the last 5 years. His days were spent under the hoods of sputtering engines, his evenings taking the same familiar route home to the quiet, tree-lined streets of his neighborhood. Hoodie up against the evening chill, hands shoved deep in the pockets, lost in his own thoughts about bills and the weekend. But tonight, there was this weird, prickling feeling on the back of his neck, like someone was watching him. He tried to shake it off, chalking it up to being tired after a long 10-hour shift. As he stepped off the curb to cross Elm Street, a police cruiser, its headlights cutting through the dimming light, slowed to a crawl right beside him. Those flashing blue and red lights suddenly filled his vision, bouncing off the parked cars and the storefronts. The driver's side door swung open, and out stepped Officer Daniels, his bulky silhouette framed by the harsh glare. Even before saying a word, Daniels' eyes raked over Michael from head to toe, a look of instant judgment, like he'd already written Michael's story before even hearing his name. "You fit the description of a suspect in a recent incident," Daniels said, his voice flat, cold, devoid of any real curiosity. "Where were you approximately 1 hour ago?" Michael frowned, confusion knitting his brow. "An hour ago? Man, I was at work. Over at Precision Auto. You can call Mr. Henderson my boss right now if you want." Daniels didn't even seem to register the words. He was already reaching for the snap on his duty belt, his hand hovering near his handcuffs. "All right, buddy, hands where I can see him. Now." Michael instinctively took a step back, a knot of anxiety tightening in his stomach. "Wait a minute. Hold on. What did I even do? What kind of incident are you talking about?" Daniel's hand tightened on the handle of his taser, the black plastic menacing in the fading light. "Are you resisting? Because resisting an officer will just make things a whole lot worse for you." Michael froze, the warning clear. He knew how these kinds of encounters could escalate in a heartbeat. With a sigh of resignation, he raised his hand slowly, palms facing forward. "I ain't resisting nothing, officer. I just want to know what's going on." Before Michael could get another word out, Daniels lunged forward, his hand clamping down hard on Michael's wrist. The cold, unyielding metal of the handcuff snapped shut around it, the sound echoing in the stillness. Michael barely had time to react before Daniels reached into his own pants pocket with his free hand. In a swift, almost imperceptible movement, He then stuffed something small and light into the pocket of Michael's hooded sweatshirt. Michael's blood ran cold. His heart slammed against his ribs. A split second later, Daniels was smoothly reaching back into Michael's pocket, pulling out the very same small, clear plastic bag. Well, Daniels drawled, a smug, self-satisfied smirk spreading across his face. Looky here. Possession with intent to distribute a controlled substance. That's a felony, Carter. Michael's stomach plummeted, a wave of nausea washing over him. You just planted that on me, he exclaimed, his voice rising in disbelief and outrage. Daniels let out a harsh, mocking laugh. Oh yeah? You got proof of that, tough guy? Go ahead and prove it. Michael didn't say another word, because concealed inside the lining of his hoodie, secured with a small, almost invisible clip, was a tiny body camera. He'd started wearing it a few months back, after hearing too many stories, seeing too many news reports about incidents just like this. He never thought he'd actually need it, but there it was, and it had captured everything. The precise moment Daniel's hand went into his own pocket, the subtle shift as he slipped the bag into Michael's, the triumphant, arrogant grin that had flickered across his face. The whole damn setup was there, in crystal clear video. Michael had the evidence, but he knew better than to reveal his hand now. If he said anything, if he even hinted that he had proof, Daniels might just confiscate his phone, maybe even find some reason to delete the footage. No, he had to play it cool. Let Daniels think he'd gotten away with it. Michael stayed silent, his jaw tight, his eyes burning with a cold fury. That's what I thought. Daniels sneered, giving Michael a rough shove toward the open back-door cruiser. Michael stumbled and caught himself, then slid into the uncomfortable plastic seat. He stared straight ahead, his mind racing. He already had Daniels dead to rights. The dirty cop just didn't know it yet. The courtroom was hushed, the only sound the faint hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. The judge, a stern-faced woman with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, stared down at Officer Daniels from her elevated bench, her expression unreadable. The jury, a panel of 12 ordinary citizens, watched the proceedings with a mixture of shock and disbelief. Michael's public defender, a sharp young woman named Ms. Davies, stood confidently before the large projection screen that dominated one wall of the room. With a final, dramatic flourish, she pressed the play button on her laptop. And there it was. Clear as day, the grainy but undeniable footage flickered to life. There was Michael walking down the street, hands in his pockets. Then the cruiser pulling up, Daniels stepping out, the brief, tense exchange, and then the unmistakable moment. Daniel's hand dipping into his own pocket, the subtle bulge in his palm, the quick, furtive movement as he planted the bag in Michael's hoodie. The camera, though small, had captured it all. And then Daniels pulling the bag back out, his smug, self-satisfied smirk in full view. The audio was clear too, Daniel's condescending words echoing to the silent courtroom. Yeah? You got proof of that, tough guy? Go ahead and prove it. Now, on that screen, Michael was doing exactly that. A wave of murmurs rippled through the jury box. Daniels, who had been sitting ramrod straight just moments before, visibly paled, his face losing all its color. The confident swagger he'd carried himself with throughout the trial had completely evaporated, replaced by a look of dawning horror. The judge's gavel came down with a sharp, decisive crack, the sound echoing like thunder in the stunned silence. Officer Daniels, she declared, her voice ringing with authority. Based on the irrefutable evidence presented before this court, you are hereby placed under immediate arrest for fabricating evidence, wrongful arrest, and abuse of power. A collective gasp filled the courtroom. Michael finally let out a long, slow breath he hadn't even realized he'd been holding. Justice, it seemed, had actually been served. Two bailiffs approached Daniels, who stood there, frozen and ashen face, his eyes wide with disbelief. The same cold metal handcuffs that he had so casually slapped on Michael just days before were now being placed on his own wrists. He was led away, a broken and disgraced figure, the irony of the situation hanging heavy in the air. But Michael? He stood up, his shoulders straightening, and walked out of that courtroom a free man. The weight of injustice finally lifted. This, the voiceover began as the scene faded to black, happens every single day in America. Innocent black men and people color everywhere, being falsely accused, targeted, railroaded by corrupt individuals hiding behind a badge. Michael was lucky. He had a small piece of technology, a silent witness that exposed the truth. But what about all the others? The ones who don't have that proof? Their lives are destroyed, their families torn apart, all because of unchecked power and prejudice. This has to stop. We need accountability. We need justice for everyone, not just those who can afford it or those who happen to have a recording. Comment justice for Michael if you believe that no one should be above the law, if you stand against police brutality and the planting of false evidence. Share this video far and wide. Let the world see the truth that Michael's story represents. Subscribe to this channel for more powerful stories that expose injustice and fight for a better, fairer world. Because next time it could be your neighbor, your brother, your son. It could be someone you love.